Hi, good to see you again. Welcome to Block 4, Operations and Equations with Directed Number, Lesson 9. I'll share my screen. So, in your previous lesson, you learned how to effectively use a calculator to to answer questions or to solve problems involving directed numbers. Now, recall that directed numbers are positive and negative integers. Integers are whole numbers. Okay, now that you know or you recall the meaning of all these words we're using, we'll focus on today's lesson, which is for you to know how to evaluate algebraic expressions with directed number. Put in another way, to evaluate means to look at an algebraic expression and then to substitute either a positive or a negative number so that you have an actual value for the algebraic expression. So to evaluate means you need to get an actual numerical value for your algebraic expression after you have substituted a positive or a negative integer. Make sure you like the video and share it with those you think could benefit from it. Subscribe to the channel and remember to click on the notification bell so that when new videos are uploaded, you'll be notified. By doing so, you help grow our mission to provide a platform where children all over the world, regardless of their economic circumstance, can have access to high quality education anytime, anywhere, provided they have internet access. Thank you. Before we start, I would like you to do the retrieval practice questions for I would like you to do retrieval practice questions in 4 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered the questions, here are the answers. So here you were asked to simply work out these calculations. So this helps you recall the things you learned working with positive and negative integers and doing a lot of the calculations involving the different operations such as multiplication and addition and subtraction. So here are the answers. I'll display the answers and then I'll make a comment on things you must remember. So remember here that we said these two signs next to each other mean negative, right? So they have an invisible multiplication with each other. And you recall that a positive and a negative will become negative. Two negatives will become positive. These two will become negative. So you can see why it will become 5 minus 7, which is negative 2. All right. These two will become positive. So you can see why it is 12. So 5 plus 12, 7 will be equal to 12. These, you recall, two negatives will multiply to give positive. A positive and a negative will multiply to give negative. A negative and a positive will multiply to give negative. Now, note that in our previous lesson, I did say division also behaves like multiplication when you consider the signs. So this is a bit like saying positive times negative will give you negative. So we know that the answer will be negative. And just to put some more detail to it, know that division can be written as a fraction. So, and a fraction can be written as division. So this here can be written like this, and then it becomes that is the same thing as negative 7 over 5. And if you change it into a mixed number, that is negative 1 2/5. Okay, let's move on to our lesson. What does each of these expressions mean? I want you to have a think before I reveal what they each mean. Well, You should recall that 5x mean 5 multiplied by x. In our previous algebra lesson, we had learned these facts. X plus 5 means x add 5. 5 plus x means 5 add x. X subtract 5, that's what it means. X minus 5 means x subtract 5. And then 5 minus x means 5 subtract x. Okay, let's substitute this negative number into each expression and see what happens. Here is the first one. I would like you to try the others. So this means 5 multiplied by negative 2 because we have substituted negative 2 for x. That will give us negative 10. I'm sure you remember how signs work. So we have positive 5 multiplied by negative 2. That should give us negative 10. So try the others. I'll give you 3 minutes to quickly do that. So pause the video and try the others. When you finish, you can review your work. Now, assuming you've paused the video and you've given it a try, here are the answers. So here we have x at 5. So that will be negative 2 at 5. So it's a bit like writing negative, negative 2 plus 5. And that will be 3. Next, we'll have that one. So that will be 5 add negative 2. All right, that is a bit like writing it like that. And do not forget that these two signs, I always say, you should see their relationships. These two signs will become negative. So that is a bit like saying 5 subtract 2. Next one is negative 2 subtract 5. So that is negative 2 minus 5. Now, do not forget, how would you do this? So if you do not know how to do it, you draw a numbered line. You start at negative 2. To subtract 5 means you will do 5 steps to the left on your number line, which should locate negative 7. 5 subtract x would be 5 minus 2, all right? Because x is negative 2. This minus is still there here. So remember, these two next to each other will become plus. So that is like saying 5 add 2. All right. If we want to substitute x equal to negative 3 into each expressions, how would this work exactly? Have a think. Well, for the first one, using bar model to help us understand what these expressions actually mean, 3x add 4 means 3 lots of x, and then in a bar add 4. That means 3 times negative 3 add 4. Why? Remember, in algebra, 3x means 3 times x. So if I expand, if I write this out, break it down to what it actually is, this is 3 times x add 4. So if we do our substitution, we have to say 3 times negative x add 4. And that will be negative 9 add 4, which is negative 5. Okay, what about this expression? This expression means, see that the x add 4 is in a bracket. So x add 4, it means we have 3 lots of x add 4. Now, of course, x is negative 3. So that means that this is what our substitution will look like. Our substitution will be 3 times negative 3 add 4. Now, remember the order of operations. We're going to have to do the bracket first. So that will be negative 3 add 4, which is 1. So 3 times 1 is equal to 3. This expression here means 4 lots of x add 2. Now, remember, in algebra, a letter next to a number are simply multiplying each other. So this is 4 times whatever x is plus 2. So if we do our substitution, that will be 4 times -3 add 2. Now, remember order of operations, you have to do the multiplication first. So 4 times -3 will be -12, add 2. -12 add 2 means if you were to do this on a number line, just in case you don't know how to do this, you start on -12. To add 2 means you do 2 steps forward or 2 steps to the right, and that will get you to -10. This expression here, 2x add 1, means 2 lots of x add 1 in a bar model. Now, remember that 2x means 2 times x, all right? A letter next to the number, we call the letter the variable, we call the number next to the letter the coefficient. So remember these words, we've done this in our previous lessons. So if we do our substitution, it would look like this. Now, you can see that we have brackets. So remember order of operations, bit maths. You can go and watch our bit maths lesson. We have to do the bracket first. But even within the bracket, we have to do the multiplication first. So that will become 2 times -6 add 1. Now, we still have to complete the bracket. So -6 add 1, that will be -5. And so 2 times -5 will be -10. Now, what's the same, what's different? Well, you can see that these two expressions are actually equivalent. That's why we have the same values. So when we evaluate the expressions, equivalent expressions would have the same value if we substitute the same value into the variable. It's now time for you to practice what you've learned. Pause the video and answer questions 1 and 2 in 4 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered the questions, here are the answers. So for the first one, you were asked to use the bar models to help you substitute y equal to -5 into the expressions. So by now, you should know how to do your substitution. So 2y means 2 times whatever y is. Y is -5, so 2 times -5 will be -10. -10 add 3 will be -7. And here you can see that we'll do the bracket first, so that will be 2. We have -5 add 3. That will be -2. 2 times -2. If you were to do the bracket, whatever is in a bracket can be multiplied by what is outside the bracket. So 2 times -2 will be -4. Here we'll have 4, and then we have 2 add. The addition is still there, but we have -5. Now, remember what we learned, that these two next to each other is negative. So this is like saying 4 bracket 2 minus 5. And of course, 2 minus 5 is -3. So 4 times -3 is -12. Okay, for question 2, you were asked to evaluate the expression. So I'm not going to talk about 1b. For question 2, you were asked to evaluate the expression when y is -8. We follow the same approach to achieve these results. So mark your work and celebrate your success. For questions 3 and 4, pause the video and answer questions 3 and 4 in 3 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered the questions, here are the answers. So for question 3, you were asked, Rosie and Jack are substituting b equal to -2 into this expression. You can see the expression there. Here, Rosie says the answer is -3. And then Jack says, I think the answer is 13. Who is correct? Jack is correct. But the question was, what mistake do you think the other person made? So Rosie has calculated 5 minus 8, not 5 minus 8. And here is why. If we do our substitution, we should have something like this: 5 minus 4, but B is -2. So remember, whatever is next to a number is actually multiplying it. So this means 4 times B. So -4 times -2. So what you should have now is, remember, if you were to do the order of operation, you have to do the multiplication first. So this becomes 5 minus 4 times -2 is -8. So that is what it should look like. Now remember, these two signs next to each other will become plus. They invisibly multiplying each other. And by now, you know two negatives will multiply to become positive. So that becomes 5 add 8, which is equal to 13. So you can see why Jack is right. Okay. Next, for question 4, you were asked to evaluate the expressions when h is -7. Now, to evaluate the expressions, remember, means you substitute a value in and you get an actual value, numerical value, after you finish your calculation. So 2 times -7 is -14. So I'm going to discuss this one. So 2 times -7, because that's what it is, 2h means 2 times h. 2 times -7 adds 16. Now remember your order of operations. You do that multiplication first. So -14 add 16 is equal to 2. And those are the answers for the other ones. So mark your work and celebrate your success. Okay, let's move on to the second part of our lesson where we'll do some further learning. What does each expression actually mean? Pause the video and have a think. Well, I'm sure you would agree that these expressions mean x multiplied by y, x add y add x subtract y, and y subtract x. What if we asked to substitute these values, substitute x equal to -2 and y equal to 8 into each expression? We would apply the same principle because we would just substitute the numbers. So x multiplied by y would mean -2 times 8, which is equal to -16. What about the others? Give it a try. Let's see whether your answers would agree with mine. Pause the video and give it a try. Assuming you've paused the video and you've tried answering the questions, here are the answers. X add y would be -2 add 8. So x is -2 and y is 8. So it will be x add -2 add 8, which is 6. Y add x will be 8 plus -2. Of course, the negative and the positive will become negative. All right, they're invisibly multiplying each other, and by now you know a positive and a negative will become negative. So this can be rewritten as 8 subtract 2, which will give us 6. Next, x subtract y means -2 subtract 8. Now, if you do not know how to do this, you can do it with your number line. So -2 subtract 8 means you start at -2, and to subtract 8 means you count 8 steps on your number line to the left. And that would give you negative 10. Next one is y subtract x. Y is 8 and x is negative 2. So the subtraction sign is still there and the x is negative 2. But don't forget, these two next to each other will become plus. So your answer should be 10. What about this? What does this expression mean? Pause the video and have a think. Well, this expression means x divided by y. So, if we have xy, is it equivalent to yx? What do you think? But would x divided by y be the same as y divided by x? Do you agree with Ron? Substitute x equal to negative 2 and y equal 8 into each expression and check and see whether Ron is right. Would x divided by y be equivalent to y divided by x? Of course, x divided by y will be negative 2 divided by 8. If we write it out or if we work it out even using our calculator, that will be negative 0.25. But if we work it the other way around, that will be 8 divided by negative 2, which will be negative 4. So you can see that the expressions are not equivalent. All right, pause the video and have a go at the rest of the questions. Pause the video and have a go at questions 5 and 6. You can try it in 4 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered questions 5 and 6, here are the answers. So for question 5, you were asked to evaluate the expressions by substituting the values a equal to negative 6 and b equal to 5, c equal to 2 and d equal to negative 4. Now, these expressions require you to do very simple substitutions. So I'll discuss this really quickly. So a is negative 6. So if we were to do this, we will evaluate it, we'll substitute a equal negative 6. D is equal to negative 4. So when we write this out, it will be minus negative 4. These two here will become plus. So it's when you rewrite it, this is like negative 6 add 4. Negative 6 add 4 is negative 2. Here, A is negative 6. B is 5. So this is like saying negative 6 times 5 because AB means A times B. And that will be negative 30. 2D will be 2 times whatever D is. D is negative 4, so your answer will be negative 8. Here, you would have to do the bracket first. We already know the value of the bracket is negative 2. We've done it here. So 7 times negative 2 will be negative 14. Here, we already know what AB is. So 2 times AB, which is negative 30, will be negative 60. D squared. Now, we know D is negative 4. So this means negative 4. Remember, you're squaring the D, so you have to put it in bracket because you're squaring everything that is D. And everything that is D is negative 4. So the way to do this in maths is you put it in bracket to hold the D to show that you're squaring the whole of D. So negative 4 squared will be negative 4. To square something means to multiply that thing by itself. And that will be negative 4 times negative 4, which will be 16. Remember, multiplying two negatives will give you positive. Here, we already know what A subtract D is. We know from here that it is negative 2. So if we write this, this is like saying negative 7. Remember, whatever is in a bracket can be multiplied by what is outside the bracket. So this is like saying negative 7 multiply negative 2. And that will be 14. Two negatives multiply each other to give you a positive. We already know what AB is. AB is negative 30. So this is like saying negative 30 divided by 2, which will be negative 15. Here, 2D means 2 times negative 4 because D is negative 4. Minus, we already know what D squared is. D squared is 16. 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. Negative 8 subtract 16 is like saying negative 8 on a number line. To subtract 16 means you need to do 16 steps to the left of your number line. Another way of thinking about it is negative 8 add 8 already takes you to negative 8 add 8 already takes you to 0. All right. So you know that to get to negative 16, you have to do 16 more steps. All right. But a quicker way to do it is to start at negative 8 and then to make your steps 16 steps further down to give you negative 24. Well, now that we have discussed this, here are the answers for the others. You can mark your work and celebrate your success. For question 6, you were simply asked, using only letters, write algebraic expressions that give these answers. Okay, so here you were required to now work in the reverse. So for example, to get 12, you can do y minus x. Y 10, y is 10, so 10 minus minus, so just to explain this one, 10 minus minus, okay, 2, because we know x is negative 2. These two will be positive, so that will give us 12. So have a think through those and practice to really understand how to evaluate algebraic expressions using positive or negative integers. Pause the video and answer question 7 in 2 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered the questions, here are the answers. Apologies for that. Here are the answers. So here you were asked, Philip is evaluating the expression n minus p squared when n is negative 7 and p is negative 3. So you're being asked what mistake Philip has made. So Philip made the mistake of not putting the p, the value of p, in a bracket because the p is being squared. P is negative 3, so he has to put it in a bracket. So that is the mistake he made. And then how could Philip make sure he doesn't make this mistake again? Use brackets. Pause the video and answer questions 8, 9, and 10 in 5 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered questions 8, 9, and 10, here are the answers. For question 8, you were simply asked, here are some expression cards. What is the range of the cards when k is equal to negative 8 and m is equal to negative 2? So for these, you're going to have to do all your substitution and get the values of the cards. Then to find the range, you need to take the lowest value from the highest value. And that gives you your range. So we'll just do the first one. So k is negative 8 and m is negative 2. So this will be negative 2 subtract negative 8 because k is negative 8. These two will become positive. Negative 2 add 8 is 6. So that should be 6. All right, I'll let you do the others and check the answers. I don't want the video to be too long, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Pause. Here are the answers for questions 9 and 10. So for question 9, you're asked an approximate rule for converting degree Fahrenheit to degree Celsius is given by the formula. You're asked to use this rule to convert 18 degrees Fahrenheit into degrees Celsius. This is a very popular science question. So here, we want to convert 18 degrees Fahrenheit. So we'll put 18 minus 30 divided by 2. 18 minus 30 is negative 12. Negative 12 divided by 2 will give us negative 6. And you can see your answer there. Aisha substitute for B. Aisha substitutes a different value for Fahrenheit and gets C equal to 0. That's the temperature measure in degrees Celsius. What was Aisha's value for the Fahrenheit? It has to be 30. Why? Because 30 subtract 30 is 0. 0 divided by 2 will be 0. So it has to be 30. Okay. Next for question 10, the answer is right there. So you're being asked if y is negative, which card would give the greater value? All right. You can use this to evaluate. Okay. So I'm not going to discuss this in detail. I don't want the video to be too long. So you can use this to test what you've learned so far. Try different numbers and test your conjecture. And that brings us to the end of the lesson. Very exciting to have learned about how to evaluate algebraic expressions using directed numbers. So what you've learned so far is to pay close attention to knowing to use brackets at the right time when you're evaluating expressions and to know the rule of how our signs work. Two negatives next to each other will result in a positive. A positive and a negative next to each other will result in a negative. A negative and a positive next to each other will result in a negative. And a positive, of course, will result in a positive. Well done for sticking around and for taking your learning seriously. Until next time, take really good care of yourself and bye-bye.